And once again, it's The Horror Guys. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And as usual, we got 4 movies and a short for you.
Episode 257.
It is, yes. Yeah. We always say that like it's important.
Oh, it's important to me.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a mix of good and bad this week.
We do.
Good, bad, the good, the bad, and the mediocre.
Yeah.
Well, we have Saw. Remember Saw from 2004?
I saw Saw. Did you saw Saw?
19 years ago already.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we'll kind of watch a maybe monster movie, Hunter x Hunter from 2020, which was one that completely slipped by me. I had not heard of this until I saw it on some list. And
it's pretty low budget.
It is, but it was surprisingly good. And then there's Gargoyles from 1972.
Not the cartoon show.
No, an actual live-action movie. And then we watch a bit of a cult film, Fertilize the Blaspheming Bombshell from 1990.
We had to watch that just from the name alone.
Yes, and the preview. And we thought, we need to see that.
All right, so that's what we're going to talk about today. In addition, if you're on our weekly email newsletter at horrorbulletin.com, you can also read about Repulsion from 1965 and The Conspiracy from 2013.
Both of which were pretty good.
No.
Okay.
Conspiracy sucked.
Oh, it did not suck.
It was the dumbest thing we saw this month.
It did. He's harsh and unnecessarily on that.
You should probably read our review of those.
We have mixed opinions on The Conspiracy.
Okay, so let's see. What do we got this week? We got Saw from 2004.
Which was directed by James Wan. Written by Lee Wannell and James Wan. Stars Carrie Elvis, Lee Wannell, Danny Glover, and Ken Leung. Runtime's an hour and 43 minutes.
If you've never heard of this movie, there's a trailer in the show notes.
Or if you've never seen it. If you haven't seen it, you really should see it before you listen to anything else that we say.
If you haven't seen Saw, you should see Saw, so that way you can say you saw Saw.
I saw Saw, yes.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you want to go into it blind if you haven't. Like you said, it's 19 years old. Most people, I think, have seen it or are familiar with it.
I went into it blind, saw it at the theater.
I saw it on TV at some point, but I was blind at that point, too. So, yeah, it was all like, whoa.
Yeah, whoa, that was a surprise. Yeah.
And then every movie in the series after that tries to end with the whoa.
Tries to be
always
surprising.
Succeed.
Yeah.
Well, if you've never seen the Saw movies and haven't been spoiled, we strongly encourage you to see this before going any further. The script is unique and creative, graphic and tense. The Horror Guys both like this a lot, even after a second or third viewing. Yes, definitely very good.
Shall I tell them what happens?
Tell them what happens.
Well, a guy wakes up in the dark underwater in a bathtub. He gets out, finds himself chained to a pipe, and he hears someone else in the room with him. Well, that other person finds the light switch, turns him on, and he sees that he's in some kind of big industrial, really awful bathroom. And there's another man chained up on the other side of the room, and there's a dead man laying in the floor in the middle of the room. Apparently that guy shot himself in the head.
I wonder how many times they had to rebuild that bathroom set for future movies. They keep coming back to it.
They do, yeah. Well, the first guy is Adam, who is also the writer guy. He cast himself in it, or was cast in it. And the other guy is Dr. Lawrence Gordon. They don't recognize the dead guy. Neither of them remembers why they are there, or how they got there. Lawrence has been there longer, and he seems a little more clear-headed about all this. And they notice, among all the grunginess, that the clock on the wall is clean and new. So somebody wants them to know what time it is. Adam finds a cassette tape labeled Play Me in his pocket, and Lawrence has one as well. Lawrence also has a key and a bullet. Well, the key doesn't open either of their padlocks, but they notice the dead man has a cassette player in his hand. So they improvise using a boot and stuff to retrieve the cassette player, and the tape says that Adam hasn't lived, he's just a voyeur. Are you going to watch yourself die today, Adam, or are you going to do something about it? And Lawrence's tape says his goal is to kill Adam, and he has until 6 o'clock to do it. Well, they can't reach each other, so how's that going to happen? If he doesn't kill Adam, then Lawrence's wife and child will be killed. And it gives a hint, follow your heart. Well, they do notice there's a heart on the filthy toilet, so Adam digs in, finds a pair of hacksaws inside. Well, they furiously work to cut through the chains, and that's not going to work. They quickly realize he doesn't want us to cut through our chains, he wants us to cut through our feet.
Ow.
Yeah, how bad do you want to get loose? Well, we get a flashback about detectives finding a guy in some kind of razor wire contraption that the man tried to crawl through. It was a trap with a cassette tape and a timer, and the guy bled to death trying to get out. So the police have started calling the killer Jigsaw. And we show another guy who got burned to death with a complicated task involving a candle. And they find a peephole there, so they know that Jigsaw is watching, apparently, while these things happen. Well, we get flashbacks to Dr. Gordon telling the learners, his little intern people, about a patient named John who has inoperable cancer. He gets called in to talk to the detectives about the murders because he's a suspect. They found his flashlight at one of the murder scenes. Well, the police have one witness who was a survivor of one of the traps. Her name's Amanda, and she recounts what happens to her. We see that in flashback. She wakes up strapped to a chair with a weird helmet on her head, and a weird doll comes on the TV and tells her it's time to play a game. He showed her what the device on her head would do, and the key was inside the stomach of her dead cellmate. And she has to cut the guy open, who actually wasn't even completely dead, and to get the key out to him.
Didn't slow her down, though.
No, it did slow her down, yeah. Well, she got the device off just in time, and she tells the cops that he helped me. Well, back in the big bathroom, Lawrence tells all this to Adam. They soon figure out that they are being recorded. There's a hidden mirror, hidden one way that they smash, and they see camera equipment behind it. Lawrence says it's the perfect setup, and all this has been planned out in great detail. And we currently see that Lawrence's wife and daughter have been captured and tied up. It's Zepp Hindle, one of the workers at the hospital, who Lawrence was dismissive of, and he apparently did it. He's there with the wife and the kid. Well, we see that the detectives have been after Jigsaw for a long time. They got a lead on Amanda's Jigsaw tape and followed it to Jigsaw's lair and workshop. They find a scale model of the bathroom and the two guys and the corpse in it, and then they find the tricycle doll. They also find a man in a trap, but before they can get the man loose, someone comes up in the elevator. The detectives hide as that someone in a cloak comes inside. Cops draw weapons, but Jigsaw activates a trap that will kill the man if they don't release him. So as the cops try to figure out the trap, Jigsaw gets away after cutting one in the throat, and the other cop gets shot in a booby trap.
Oops.
Yeah. Well, back in the bathroom, Lawrence finds a box with a cell phone and a cigarette inside. The phone only receives calls. Lawrence fakes killing Adam, and the guy watching them doesn't buy it. He electrifies Adam's chain, proving that Adam is indeed still alive. Well, Diana, Lawrence's daughter, calls Lawrence, and she sounds terrified. Allison, Lawrence's wife, asks about Adam. Don't believe Adam's lies. He knows all about you. He knew you before today. Well, that's a revelation. And then Adam admits, yeah, he's been following Lawrence and taking pictures of him like a private detective. Lawrence has been cheating on Allison, and Adam's been documenting that. Detective Tapp, he was the surviving cop, not Grover.
Danny Glover.
Yeah, why Grover? Yeah, Danny Glover. He's the one that got his throat cut. He's the survivor. He was the guy who hired Adam to follow Lawrence because he's obsessed thinking that Lawrence was Jigsaw. And he's been stalking him for months. Well, Adam shows Lawrence a picture with Zepp in it, and the doctor immediately recognizes him from the hospital. And the clock strikes 6. Time is up. So Zepp comes in to kill Diana and Allison. Except Allison has gotten herself untied. She gets Zepp's gun. They wrestle and a shot goes off, which Tap hears across the street from his surveillance position. Tap comes in, he fights Zepp, which leads to a car chase, and Zepp kills Tap.
Oops.
Yeah, and things start getting crazier. Lawrence is absolutely desperate, thinking his wife and daughter's being killed, so he proceeds to saw his own foot off. He crawls over to the dead man, puts his one bullet into the dead man's gun, and shoots at him, which is, what he was told he had to do to save his family. Well, the door to the bathroom opens, and Zepp walks in. Zepp thinks that Adam is dead, and then Adam, who was faking it, jumps up and beats Zepp to death with a toilet tank lid.
Ow.
Yeah. Lawrence says he's going for help as he crawls outside, leaving a bloody trail from his stump. Well, Adam, who is still chained, finds a cassette in Zepp's pocket that explains to Zepp that he was poisoned and needs to obey for the cure.
Wait a minute. He's not Jigsaw?
No, he's a forced accomplice. He was instructed to kill Lawrence's family and then carry out enforcement of the rules. And as Adam hears all this, the dead man on the floor gets up. Not dead at all, and we see that he's John, the patient from the hospital. He was behind it all. Adam grabs Zepp's gun, thinking he's going to shoot John, but John turns on the electric zapper again to stun him. And Jigsaw says, "Game over," as he leaves and shuts the door behind him, leaving Adam in there.
Wow.
And Lawrence, I'm assuming, is, crawling down the hallway
to
still.
this day, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I saw this when it first came out, and I haven't seen it since, actually. All I remembered was the stuff in the bathroom, but there's a lot more to this with the flashbacks, the detective stuff, and the various affairs. Mm-hmm. It's got a very complicated and clever script.
Yeah, it is.
There is some gore here, and it's well done. The traps are unique and interesting, which basically becomes the point of the whole franchise. The ending is a shocker. All along, we were led to believe that Zepp was the killer, and turned out he was just a forced accomplice. It is very good.
Yes, it is.
They should make some sequels to that.
They should. Maybe about 9 of them.
At least, yeah.
Yeah.
Not quite Halloween level yet, but there's a lot of them.
Uh-huh.
Actually, they haven't done any reboots, have they?
No.
So there's really more Saw movies than there
do.
are pretty much of anything else. Everything else has gotten rebooted somehow.
Uh-huh, yeah.
What's next?
Hunter x Hunter from 2020.
2020, Hunter x Hunter. Yes, let's talkie.
Yeah. It was written and directed by Sean Linden. Stars Camille Sullivan, Summer H. Howell, Devon Saw, and Nick Stahl. Runtime's an hour and 33 minutes, and there's a trailer in the show notes.
Spoiler free. What happens?
Well, it's a wholesome movie about a happy family hunting and trapping and living off the land, right?
I don't remember it like that.
No? Well, okay, it's a little more complicated than that when there's a wolf that seems to be targeting them. So it's just a hunting wolf, right?
Uh-huh.
Except it's more complicated than that even.
It always is.
Yeah. The tension winds up really nicely, and it's got a brutal ending. And it was a really good one that, like I mentioned before, it slipped under our radar, and we'd highly recommend it.
Again, I would recommend going into this one blind if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, if you can. We did. And,
neither of us had even heard of this, and it just sort of, I don't know why it came up, but...
And from the preview, you think maybe it's, a monster wolf or possibly a werewolf, or, it implies, I think, from the preview.
Yeah, I definitely think from the preview we were expecting werewolves.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're not going to
It's more complicated than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So skip on ahead if you haven't seen this, and it sounds intriguing. But yeah, we liked it. It was good.
But it being 3 years old, are we going to spoil it completely?
You betcha we are.
Okay, you are warned.
As the credits roll, we watch a father and daughter check their traps with their dog. They're a modern-day wilderness family of trappers. It's all going well until they find an animal's foot in one of their traps. Something got the rest of the animal. "It's back," says the girl. Well, Anne takes a load of pelts to the store and sells them to the man inside. She looks longingly at the house for sale ads when she finds out she doesn't have enough for groceries.
Yeah, the pelt man doesn't give her as much as she was hoping.
Trapping isn't what she'd hoped.
Yeah.
Everyone gets back home, and the father butchers the animals they brought home and explains how to do it to the daughter, Renee. Anne and Joe argue about the wolf, who has returned for some reason. "It's attracted to us," she argues. She also complains about not having money for food before winter comes. She wants to get a job and buy a real house in town. People don't live like this anymore. It feels like the world has left us behind.
And people do live like this successfully, but they're kind of just barely scraping by. They're not thriving at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta watch those Life Below Zero shows.
Yeah.
The following morning, Joe and Renee go out wolf trap setting, and he knows all about the wolves. At one point, he looks very serious and sends her home with a gun, back the way she came, because the wolf is near. We then get a montage of him hunting and Anne and Renee running in terror from the sounds they hear in the woods. There's something out there.
Something wolfy.
Joe gets the wolf in his sight and shoots. Was that wolf carrying a human hand? Oh, yes, it was.
Well, that was unexpected.
He tracks the wolf's blood across the road, but loses the trail. He keeps going until he finds a dead woman, tied to a tree, and several others naked and dead arranged in a clearing.
And that was completely unexpected.
That's not what a werewolf does. It's not
No.
what a real wolf does.
Yeah.
They've been there for a while. Does he tell anyone? Does he call the police? No. Did the wolf do it? No. Well, the next day he goes back to the corpse clearing, and it's clear that he's not hunting for a wolf anymore. The wolf comes up on Anne and Renee while they're out fishing in the river, and they scream and run back to the house. Anne goes back to find their missing dog, which she soon does, but it's too late for the pet. Anne doesn't tell Renee about the dead dog. No, the dog does not survive the
He
movie.
must have run away or something. Yeah.
Anne and Renee go out for food the following day, and the animals in their traps have all been eaten by the wolf again. They find wolf poop, and it's got someone's wedding ring in it.
That's not good.
How'd that wedding ring get in there? It must have been something he ate.
Or someone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anne goes to the police station and tells them about the wolf and the ring. They say that Joe's land is really government land, and they're living out there illegally in the first place. The officer says, well, there's nothing to be done. Wolves are native to the area. That wolf is supposed to be there. You're not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, they need food, so Anne shoots a little baby deer and has Renee show her how to skin it. That night, Renee says the dog is returned, but Anne knows better. There is something out there moaning in the woods. It's a man, but it's not Joe. Anne drags the man back to the cabin and does first aid on him.
It's Nick Stahl.
Uh-oh, you know he's never good.
He often is bad.
Has he ever played a hero?
He has.
Terminator, yeah, okay.
Carnival. He was a heroic figure in that.
Oh, I forgot he was in that.
Yeah.
The injured man, Lou, says he's a photographer whose car broke down. He puts up a lot of protest when Anne wants to take him to town, so his story doesn't really check out. Danny, the police officer that Anne talked to, notices an abandoned car on the side of the road that was there yesterday, which he thinks is suspicious. He starts thinking about that ring, the abandoned car, and all the missing people from the area. He finds the same marks on the trees that Joe found, and he follows them. He soon comes across the bodies, and there's no wolf or bear that did that. He then steps into the biggest bear trap I've ever seen.
Oh, that was a painful looking scene. And then it gets worse.
And then he puts his hand in another one.
Yeah, he's fumbling around and finds another
There's
one.
all kinds of bear traps around there.
Yeah.
Surprised Joe didn't get into one.
Yeah, he was lucky to avoid them.
The next morning, Lucy, the other cop, figures out that the first cop didn't check in and goes looking. Anne goes out looking for food and finds Joe in the woods, very, very dead. A wolf didn't do it either. She immediately comes to the conclusion that Lou is a murderer and runs for home.
He is the prime suspect.
We don't know, but it sure looks like he is.
Yeah, it does.
Lucy stops by the abandoned cars and hears Danny shooting his pistol. She soon finds him in the traps and the dead bodies there too, and calls just about everybody to come investigate.
Mm-hmm.
They soon find a blood trail and start following it. Anne gets home and Lou immediately attacks her. Renee walks in on that and starts screaming. When Anne wakes up, Lou wants the key to the truck. He grabs a can of gasoline and starts a fire outside. He then comes inside to finish off Anne, but she hits him in the face with an animal trap. Like, ever getting hit in the face with a bear trap?
Oh.
That's gotta hurt.
Ow.
A lot.
Yeah.
She then goes into the next room and finds what's left of Renee.
And we don't see that. We just see her reaction. But yeah, we know it's
It
bad.
ain't good.
Yeah.
Anne hoists Lou up and pulls out the animal skinning knives. He screams in agony as she smiles. Turns out she's really good at this backwoods stuff after all.
Mm-hmm.
She only skinned that one animal once, but she's okay doing it to
She
him.
knows how to do it now. Yeah.
The police arrive at the cabin after it's all over. Lou is still more or less sort of kind of alive. Lucy is in awe of what Anne has done. Anne is still in shock. And as far as we know, at least the wolf lived happily ever after.
Uh-huh. Happy ending for somebody, at least.
It's Deliverance meets Life Below Zero.
Yeah, basically.
In this situation, if I had found out that Joe's land wasn't even his and he'd been lying to his family for years, it might just be time to pack up and leave a note, especially in this situation.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He'd been lying to her since before the kid was born.
Uh-huh.
The problem here is casting of Nick Stahl. At no point did I give him the benefit of the doubt that he wasn't the killer. It was obvious, and it shouldn't have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
There's not a lot of gore until the very end, but it's totally awesome when it does happen. If you ever want to see Nick Stahl get skinned, yeah, here it is. If you like nature horror, this is actually very good.
Yeah, I thought this was really excellent.
Which takes us to our short of the week, El Monstruo from 2023, directed by Gerard Nogueira, written by Bly Domenech and Gerard Nogueira, stars Conrad Osorio and Moises Pera, 17 minutes. Watch it on YouTube if you like. It's free. It's right there. Go ahead and give it a shot. What's it about?
Well, a man runs through the woods. We see large claw marks and drool on the trees, some slimy stuff, and he soon finds a sleeping naked boy. Well, the man carries the unconscious boy through the jungle back to his house. The boy, the man's son, wakes up and says he doesn't remember what happened, but we have a pretty good idea.
Oh,
It's implied, or some.
Yeah, I think so.
If not a werewolf, some kind of creature that he turns into.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's really well acted. Has excellent scenery and cinematography.
It looks really good.
Yeah, the sound design and lighting, everything looks great. You have a feeling you know exactly what's going on from the beginning, but of course, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a bigger story that we're missing out on, but what we see is good.
and it left me wanting more too.
All right, next up, what's next?
Gargoyles from 1972. Is it a classic? Well, it's old anyway.
It used to be on TV like every weekend for a long time. I've seen this probably 5 or 6 times now.
I had never seen it. This was my first time.
I don't know if it was public domain or just super, super cheap, but it was on a lot in the 70s and 80s.
Huh. Directed by Bill Norton, written by Stephen Karff and Eleanor Karff. Stars Colonel Wilde, Jennifer Salt,
Cornell. He wasn't in the military.
Cornell, okay. Jennifer Salt, Grayson Hole, Bernie Kaysen, and Scott Glenn
Yeah.
in a supporting role. Runtime is only 1 hour and 14 minutes, and there's a trailer on YouTube.
Grayson Hall was the scientist doctor on Dark Shadows.
Oh, he was? Okay.
Yeah, and here she was just the drunken motel owner.
Oh, that was Grayson Hall. Okay.
She got a drink in her she got a glass of drink in her hand in every single scene.
Actually, I read in the trivia that she did that on purpose. She wanted that for that character. That was her goal. And if you watch every time, she does have a drink in her hand.
Like you said, the early Scott Glenn role. He was just one of the random towny hippies.
Mm-hmm.
And Bernie Casey's been in I think he's still alive, but he's been in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler free, what happens?
Well, this one takes some religious history and myth and gives it a tangible explanation. It's all very scientific.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Turns out the monstrous gargoyles on churches and such, they were actually modeled after real creatures.
I thought we all knew that.
No, we learned that in this movie.
Okay.
Yeah. It's actually pretty tame, but it's kind of entertaining for its age.
I'm not sure, but I believe it was maybe made for TV. It's
kinda
kind
had
of
that
low
look.
budget looking.
Yeah, and tame. Yeah. But entertaining overall.
Yeah, we liked it. It's worth a view. It's not great,
but it's worth it. Yeah.
We hear about the fallen angels that were thrown out of heaven. The devil predicts that his offspring, the gargoyles, will someday rule the earth. They are reborn every 600 years to battle against man to gain dominion over the earth. So they've been asleep for 600 years.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to wake up to in the 600 more years? I don't think they're ever going to win with the limitations
whatever
they've got.
Future. Yeah, it seems like they're limited. But it kind of leaves it. Are they really supernatural, or are they just some kind of weird animals that evolved? Super advanced reptiles that.
Well, they don't do any kind of magic or anything.
No.
They don't seem supernatural.
Yeah, I think maybe a supernatural explanation was assigned to them. But anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more of a sciencey viewpoint on them. No.
Dr. Bowley waits at the airport as his daughter Diana lands on a plane. They're doing anthropology in Mexico. He collects ancient demon statues, but he doesn't really believe in anything supernatural. Bowley writes books about legendary monsters, so he wants to interview this old man who's said to have some crazy stories. Well, they take a wrong turn and watch something really big fly overhead. It's a bird. It's a plane.
It's a gargoyle.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
But they don't really see it.
No, they don't.
They eventually get to Uncle Willie's Desert Museum, and Uncle Willie saw him on a TV talk show and wrote to him about some of his exhibits. He takes him out to his shed, where he's got the skeleton of what he calls a winged demon. And it does look pretty authentic, but Bowley says he probably just assembled it out of random bones.
Or did he?
Willie swears that this is the real thing, and he gets positively offended at the idea that he's a fraud. The Indians named this place Devil's Crossing in their language. These devils used to live up here in the rocks. Well, night falls, and Willie continues his story. They hear something flapping outside, and something starts clawing through the roof.
That's not good.
The roof collapses, and Willie burns to death. Bowley and Diana get out of the burning building, and he grabs the demon's skull on the way out. So presumably the gargoyles are trying to get in to steal these bones.
Take them back. They don't want any evidence.
But why then, why now, why that night instead of, however long he'd had them?
Because they just hatched. They're just getting their act together again after 600 years.
You are correct. Okay, yeah that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
In the car, they listen to the audio recording of the attack over and over and over. Something lands on the roof of the car and breaks their windshield. The thing eventually falls off, and the humans stop at a nearby gas station. They then go to a motel for the night, and Mrs. Parks, the old woman who runs the place, is weird.
And drunk.
She's drunk and all over Bowley, who is not interested. He's just not there for that, and certainly not with her. The following day, Bowley and Diana get the police involved, reporting the accident with Willie. They find looters digging through Willie's place, and the police immediately assume they were the ones who started the fire last night. There are 5 of them, and the police chief arrests them all. Diana sticks up for James and the other guys. She didn't see anyone else out there last night. Probably wasn't them.
Probably not.
Well, that night, Bowley hears something outside the motel room, and later we see something in his room. It's a gargoyle, and there's 2 of them. They steal the skull and leave, but Bowley and Diana both see them clearly this time. One of those gargoyles gets hit by a truck and killed. It's a big lizard-looking thing, but it doesn't have wings. I'm kind of reminded of the Land of the Lost Sleestacks. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Bowley talks about the myths and legends of gargoyles, which are obviously true. They want the bones of their dead, and they'll be back for the dead ones soon. Mrs. Parks wants to know what all the noise was, and they make up a cover story. Quit making all that noise in your apartment.
Okay. Yep.
Sorry. Diana goes to the police station to get James and the looters released, and she says she's got proof that they didn't do it, but the deputy can't help her that late at night. And they all think she's crazy anyway. But on the way back to the motel, she hears some very strange noises.
Could it be gargoyles?
Bowley and Diana run off with a dead creature in tow, but the other creatures soon attack again. Their leader, the one with the wings, is there this time, and he likes Diana. Ooh.
Romance.
They run off, taking Diana with them this time, and they all go to a cave somewhere. Mrs. Parks goes to the police about the attacks at the motel, but the police don't have working phones either. They're way out in the desert.
The phones have been knocked out. I wonder how that happened.
James and the deputy tell him about Diana's monster, and that Bowley comes in and tells them everything. James and his friends volunteer to join the search party, and they send Mrs. Park to the next city to bring in the state police, and everyone goes to search the hills. Meanwhile, Diana explores the Gargoyles' cave system. The leader can talk, and he shows her many books, all written by her father. I guess he's a fan.
Mm-hmm.
He wants her to read to him. He says that they have lots to learn, and they've only been awake for a few weeks. There are currently only about a dozen of them awake so far, but we see many, many eggs in the cave, and some of them are hatching right now. He says they mean no harm and just want to live in peace.
Yeah, but then...
Outside, the sheriff finds Mrs. Parks's truck covered in blood. They find her body hanging up way up high on a flagpole that evening.
Yeah, they are not friendly.
No.
No, he's just BSing her to string her along.
Like Mrs. Parks got strung along.
Yes.
Way up that pole.
Yep.
The female leader comes and tells the main leader that the eggs are hatching, but men and dogs are approaching in the desert. The leader then sends all the gargoyles to attack the men in their trucks. The gargoyles kidnap Boley and explain everything to him. They need time to hatch enough soldiers to conquer the humans. The gargoyle leader has Diana read to him some more, and the female gargoyle doesn't like it.
Yeah, she is almost acting jealous.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Boley watches more eggs being hatched. The female grabs Boley and takes him to where Diana is being held. The leader rushes off with Diana in tow, and everyone runs through the caves. All these caves with the perfectly flat, smooth bottoms.
Yes, they always are.
Always the flat floors.
Yeah.
Boley gets out of the caves, and he gets the other humans outside to watch the outside of the cave while he and James go inside with cans of gas. He wants to burn up all those eggs. The gargoyles kill James, but he burns the egg nest. Boley injures the female, and the leader has no choice but to carry her away before the men with the dogs arrive. The leader vows that his kind will one day wipe out humanity, and then he flies away with his injured female.
But we'll have to wait 600 years for the next one.
Or at least 40-something years for a sequel.
Yeah.
Actually, I think there was a 2, but
Was it?
it was like, straight to video in the 90s or something.
Oh, okay.
Well, the gargoyles here are just obviously actors in rubber suits, but they're pretty good. The leader with the wings definitely is the best looking of them, and the others are a little less convincing. It's obviously a very low-budget movie, but it used to get a lot of airtime in the 70s. I remember seeing this several times when I was small. It's pretty tame, but it's still fun.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Well, last up, Fertilize the Blaspheming Bombshell! 1990. A.K.A. Mark of the Beast. I definitely think the first name is more interesting.
Yes. Yes, it is.
We would never have watched a movie called Mark of the Beast. Fertilize the Blaspheming Bombshell is hard to turn down.
That's too intriguing to pass up. Yeah.
Written and directed by Jeff Hathcock, stars Bo Hopkins, Rick Hill, and Robert Tessier. Bo Hopkins was in like 7,000 movies, and none of them were any good. Hour and 30
some
minutes.
Of them were, I'm sure.
Spoiler-free. It's a trauma production, which often means entertaining, funny, weird, or satirical. This time, it seems like Trauma bought a poorly made and boring movie that someone else made. The soundtrack was the only bright spot in the thing, and that's about all that was good. Literally, it's a very dark, dull movie.
Yeah, it was.
Yep,
Yeah,
there's people running around through the desert. Oh, look, there's more
Sadly,
people running around through the desert.
Didn't live up to the title.
It's a car chase in the desert.
Hmm.
Okay, well, what happens?
Do I have to read all this?
I'm
'Cause
afraid you do.
You just summarized it.
There's car chases in the desert.
Well, we open at night. Things happen in the dark.
It's a very dark movie.
A bunch of cultists walk around carrying torches, chanting. It looks like they burn up a man as a sacrifice, and then credits roll. At least we think that's what happened.
It was dark.
Sheriff John Farlock gets a call. His deputy found a man charbroiled.
Okay, that's what happened.
Yep. We cut to a couple on a road trip to the Devil's Playground.
That's where I want to go on my next vacation.
Sounds fun. They stop, and Sandy mentions to her fiancé that she's got a twin, Susan, and they can often feel what the other does. They find a turnoff from the dark desert road, and it turns out to not be the right road after all. Rod spots another car and follows it. They come to
Elivnatas.
Population 13.
You want to spell Elivnatas backwards and find out that it says Satanville.
Satanville.
But we're not supposed to have caught on to that immediately.
Elivnatas, yes. Well, Rod and Sandy go to a very quiet bar to use the phone. Sandy calls Susan in Vegas to let her know they'll be late. Someone cuts the phone line before she can finish her call. The barmaid tells Rod that the road will take them to Vegas in about an hour, but they end up in a dead-end canyon. I think they've been set up. They find a hole in their gas tank. They're out of gas.
Yep, they were set up.
They were set up. Well, suddenly they hear chanting from the hills, and here come the Satanists over the hills bearing torches. And they soon set fire to Rod and throw him off a cliff as Sandy watches.
Ow.
They capture Sandy and carve a pentagram on her. Then the high priest fertilizes her.
I knew that was coming in sooner or later.
Before stabbing her to death. Well, back in Vegas, Susan feels it when Sandy is killed. In the morning, she goes looking for Rod and her sister. The gas station guy talks to her about the area, but he's never heard of Alivnatas. It's hard to it's hard to say.
It's
backwards.
not a real word.
Yeah. Well, we then get an intense driving montage as Susan explores the cliffs and rocks of Devil's Playground. She eventually finds Rod's car parked off on a nearby road. And she also finds a pentagram on the ground and a hole in the gas tank. Dan, the gas station guy, catches up with her, and he can't explain the pentagram. They come to the conclusion that something satanic went on here last night. Susan's an anthropologist, so she knows all about these things. And they follow the Satanist's tracks.
You don't really have to be an anthropologist to know what a pentagram is.
Yeah, there's scorch marks on the ground and a pentagram. And yeah, there's signs here. Well, they follow the tracks. It starts getting dark again. Yay. Well, they eventually go back to his place for the night, where we get a long tour of Dan's apartment. Dan mentions he doesn't trust the sheriff. She hasn't met the sheriff yet. And we watch her in a gratuitously long shower scene. Halfway through sex with Dan, the Satanists show up. No, not really. It was just a dream or something. Well, Susan goes to Sheriff John in the morning. He's never heard of Alivnatas neither.
He's the sheriff. He ought to know.
He should, yeah. Well, she explains about the abandoned car, the hole in the gas tank, and the cultists. He says that without a body, he can't do anything for another 24 hours.
Yep, because that's the way that works.
That's how that trope works in the movies. So she goes back to the desert to keep investigating. And suddenly she finds her car surrounded by dune buggies that chase her around.
Woohoo!
Yep. Somehow she outraces them in her cabriolet, driving a regular car in the desert.
Through the desert,
and
yes.
outrunning dune buggies, yeah. Well, she comes back with the sheriff, but the wrecked cars are gone by then. He believes her story, but there's nothing to follow up with. What's he going to do? Yeah, he's kind of a doof. Well, night falls again.
He's not wrong, though.
Yeah. Night falls again, and she finally reaches Alivnatas. And she sees the name reflected in a mirror, and she knows what kind of town it is now.
Satanville.
Yeah. She eventually...
Except if it was reflected in a it wouldn't mirror, it wouldn't come out like that. All the letters would be backwards.
No, well, it was a magical word, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, she eventually catches up with the cultists. The devil master calls her inside. "Welcome to the house of Satan. We've been expecting you." He says that he's going to fertilize her until she has the child of Satan.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Well, they all march outside to the pentagram, and he does a ritual so that he may fertilize this blaspheming slut. His words, yes. But first, there's a snake dance. "Now ye shall know the hard-on of sin."
Well, who wrote this?
He's got the best lines. She knees him in the groin and runs away with all the cultists in pursuit. And there is much running through Satanville.
No, there's no Benny Hill music, but it needed it.
It needed it here, yeah. Somehow, she manages to steal a dune buggy and drive off, and there's more driving action. And she soon finds a waterfall in the desert. So she suddenly forgets about the pursuing cultists and decides to take a shower in the waterfall.
As one does.
Because gratuitous, yeah. Well, we cut to Sheriff John, who is also out in the desert looking around. Dan is also driving around searching.
There's a lot of driving in this movie.
Yeah. Susan remembers that she's being chased by Satanists and runs some more.
Yeah. Oh, I'm in the middle of my shower. Oh, hey, there's Satan.
Yeah.
I should run.
She eventually runs to the road and flags down Dan's truck. Uh-oh. She notices 666 tattooed on the back of his neck. He's not a good guy after all. He's in on it. So she attacks him. She jumps out of the truck. He crashes and the truck explodes. Yeah. Well, Sheriff John sees the smoke and calls for Susan, who runs the other way. He chases her. He tells her that others have disappeared too, and he suspected cultists all along. He convinces her that he's for real. She goes back home with him. And the movie ends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, that you just made that sound a whole lot better than it really was. Well, we watched this on Tubi, and Tubi is usually pretty good quality, but this one is very dark and low quality. It's like a group of people had a video camera and access to 3 dune buggies and decided to make a movie in the desert. They didn't need a script or ideas.
That pretty much sums up where this came from, I think.
It's got a very 80s electronic soundtrack that I did like more than I probably should have.
That was good.
The movie itself, not so much. Most trauma films are funny or satirical. This was just hokey and dull.
Mostly, yeah.
A lot of driving around and walking through the desert.
The cult leader, I think, was the best part, too.
Oh, he was fun.
Yeah.
In a bad way.
In an awful kind of way, yeah.
Well, the acting isn't really all that bad, but the story and direction leave a lot to be desired, and it's actually kind of pretty boring, too.
Through most of it.
It was bad. Really bad, without much at all to redeem it.
This was one of those that we watched, so you probably don't need to.
Yeah. I'm not going to say you should watch it. It's just no.
Yeah.
Okay, so over at the newsletter at horrorbulletin.com, you can read our full reviews of all of those, as well as Repulsion from 1965, directed by Roman Polanski. And it looks good. The acting is strong, but it is very slow, and it's got a slow build up. It gets going toward the end, but feels like a very long time to get there. It's heavy on psychological drama with some horror elements. Sounds kind of dull, but we did like it more than we disliked it.
Yes, we did.
It was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And also The Conspiracy, written and directed by Christopher McBride.
Which I would recommend and Brian would not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the title implies, it's all about conspiracies. Is it real or is it nonsense? We kind of slog around wondering that for the first hour or so as the guys make their documentary. It's a found footage, and we see various footage stuff. It's got a nice finish that's interesting, but it takes a long time to get there.
It's more of a faux-umentary than a found footage, but it's a mix. They're making a documentary.
It says here that I was bored to death until the last 20 minutes, and I'm trying to remember what happened in the last 20 minutes, and I can't. So it didn't leave much of an impression.
The mask and the chase and stuff happens. There's more action at the end.
Yeah.
All is revealed at the end.
I'm going to stick with a no on this one.
Okay.
You liked it, though.
I liked it.
All right, well, that's it for this week. Stop in over at horrorguys.com to read the reviews, horrorbulletin.com to get them in your email box, or Horror Guys Shop to buy the books. We've got the Horror Guys Guide to the Films of Boris Karloff just recently came out.
Mm-hmm.
Just before that, the Horror Guys Guide to all the films of Amicus Productions. Good stuff.
They made a lot of movies.
And of course, all our reviews, plus some bonus ones usually, are in the monthly magazine. horrorguys.com/ monthly. horrorguys.com/monthly. Yes. Or you can just go to any of those places like horrorguysshop.com and do the search for the monthly. Issue 27 came out this past week with all the movies we talked about last month, and there are some good ones in there. Just look for the Blue Viking.
Yeah.
There's always something different on the cover of that thing. All right, well, we'll talk to you next week. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
See ya.
See ya.